G'day everyone, a great big thanks for joining us and welcome to our podcast that's all about growing food's future together. I'm David Sivia and I run Feedback Organic, an exciting organisation that's dedicated to exploring local solutions to the complex global problem of food waste. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to the elders both past, present and future, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture and hopes of Aboriginal Australia. We must always remember that under the concrete and asphalt, this land is, was and always will be traditional Aboriginal land. I'm here today with two magnificent legends from Oz Harvest, Nicki Read-Jones, a food rescue engagement coordinator, great title, and Richard Stark, the manager of Oz Harvest Newcastle. Hello to you both and welcome.
Hello, David.
Thank you for having us.
It's pretty cool to be here together, guys. This is really great. In this episode, we'll be chatting around a number of curious topics revolving around their respective areas of expertise, what it's like to be involved in such a trailblazing organisation that nourishes our country, and what's led them both to be pursuing such a worthwhile purpose. We'll get the chance to learn how Oz Harvest operates within the food waste ecosystem in Newcastle, why they do it, their key takeaways, and what the future holds for Australia's largest food rescue organisation, which is so much more than that. It's wonderful to have you both here. What's been happening? I hope you're all well. So let's dive in. We're all really keen to learn more about you both. So let's do a quick intro of you both and then move on to Oz Harvest and how it operates and why. Let's start with
I'm the Food Rescue Engagement Coordinator, so I'm basically responsible for ensuring that all unsold quality food is stored correctly and rescued by our Oz Harvest drivers from our major retailers. So we work with Woolworths, Aldi's, Harris Farm, Costco, KFC's, IGA's. They're my main donor clients. And we ensure that all that food then goes to our charities in the area. So when I'm talking charities, I'm talking neighbourhood centres, schools, churches, men's and women's refuges, and then they basically distribute the food out to the community. So my role is to get as much food as we possibly can that hasn't been able to be sold, that is perfectly edible, and divert it from landfill.
So impactful. What about you, Starkey?
My background, I guess, is from a chef's point of view. Grew up as a young chef, left home at 16 and started my apprenticeship. Always loved cooking, so my parents got off early and off I went, which was nice for them. That journey took me through cooking in Australia and then overseas, and I did a little bit of work in America and Germany and the UK, where I then met my beautiful wife-to-be, and I've dragged her back to Australia, kicking and streaming. I moved in from the commercial kitchen environment more into the training side of things. I always loved working with apprentices and I loved working with young people, and I guess I've always been drawn to people who have done it a bit tough in their life. Not that I did, I certainly didn't grow up that way, but I just really love working with young people, and I guess that's how my journey ended me up at Oz Harvest as they started the Nourish program here 2 years ago. And yeah, I was hired to do that, and then throughout that, then we moved into COVID food relief, education programs getting put on hold. And yeah, then at the beginning of this year, I found myself in the hot seat as the manager. I've loved all of it. It's been great.
It's nice to have you here as well. Time for Nicki to give a bit of background as well, how you've come to where you are now, because you've been immersed in it for a while, and I reckon it'd be great for our audience.
How long have you got, David?
A minute.
I did actually do my degree in hotel catering management for 4 years, and then I did the backpacking thing.
I did that as well.
And I lived in Germany, so that took me for about another year and a half, and then I got into sort of military and corporate travel agency before falling into incentive and conference management company. And I worked with this company in the UK for 3 years, but travelled around the world, and then I went freelance and worked with a number of companies for a few years until I came to Australia in 2005. And then I sort of cobbled around and did a few jobs like with Murray Darling Basin Commission. But I did then end up working at the Hunter Business Chamber, which many people would now know as Hunter Business, in a business development role for 6 years. And I stayed so long because, of course, I met so many incredible, wonderful businesses, which I was then able to connect with each other. And you know me, if anyone doesn't know, I do know David, and he knows that I do like to know everything about everybody. And I do like to know everybody in the room. I don't like to be a Norman No-Mates. And I love connecting people. It's a real passion of mine, personally and in a work environment, and just to try and make that magic flow so that more people can be helped. I then sort of finished with that, had a little break, and then I was very lucky to be approached about the job with Oz Harvest. And the minute I looked at that website, I was completely and utterly in love with it, and I just needed that job, and I have never looked back.
How long have you been in the role for?
4 years. It's been a really, really hard time through COVID. We've had to work incredibly hard, but at the end of the day, people have needed us more than ever before in the country, and Oz Harvest have stepped up when others haven't been able to.
I feel like it's really galvanised us as well, not just our team, but as an organisation, because all of a sudden the government went, hang on a minute, we've got a problem here, we need to start helping people. And one of their first ports of call when it came to food was to come to Oz Harvest And as a result of that, the food relief money came through. Yeah, bingo, we were on the map. Ronnie's got a saying that it's a magnet for magnificent people, which I think that's gold, and it's true. Everybody basically said, right, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to stop doing that. Everybody just mucked in. The impact that we had nationally was just absolutely outstanding.
Ronnie Khan was absolutely amazing, the founder of Oz Harvest. For people who don't know who she is, she literally made a commitment that nobody would lose their job through COVID, and she honoured that. Starkey, for example, set up our food relief hub here from scratch with no warning. Literally, he'd been in the education role for a couple of weeks, and then he got literally sidetracked, and it was incredible. But the impact locally, the impact on the Central Coast, the impact nationally has been absolutely incredible. But obviously that funding has finished. So our food rescue operation is so paramount, and we need support to help more.
We're talking about the global problem of food waste. And one of the questions I'm just interested to ask is, why do you think food waste is a problem within Australia? We can touch on COVID a little bit, but more just in general.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I grew up in a household where your dinner was put in front of you and you ate it, and you didn't really think about, maybe I don't like that or maybe I don't like that. And yeah, it's a really fascinating question. But these days we have so much choice. We allow people choice, which is great. But that choice sometimes can mean that if you're in a household now where mum or dad are then cooking 3 different meals for 3 different people because that's what they like to eat, there's going to be more food in the fridge. Potentially that means that more food's going to go to waste and not be used. Whereas maybe back in more traditional times, you only had what you had. You cooked the seasons because that's what was available in the shops. You couldn't buy strawberries in the middle of winter because they didn't grow.
Yeah, convenience is huge. Totally access to it as well. I've had a similar kind of upbringing to a degree. There was a limited amount of food you had in front of you. It's got massive flow-on effects, kind of we're exposed to, or younger generations are exposed to today.
It's not just an Australian problem though, Dave. It's a global problem. Something like 931 million tonnes of food is wasted every year globally, obviously costing billions. In Australia alone, it costs 36.6 billion. Our food waste costs. Food is wasted, 1/3 in the home, 1/3 at the farm, and 1/3 through our retailers and industry. And we all have to take responsibility at every level to make that change.
It's totally true. Our last podcast was interviewing Beck Bowie from Estebar, kind of on the cafe or restaurant scene. And Starkey, that probably refers back to you as well, kind of your chefing expertise. With that global problem of food waste and with your background as a chef, have you ever had any unusual or exceptional experiences cooking for royalty or even broached the celebrity life?
I did have a job interview at Buckingham Palace,
Yes.
which was quite a great experience, I guess, for me. It was just really ad hoc. Essentially, there used to be a catering trade magazine in London that was from any metro, and we'd just flick through it and we saw an ad for chefs at Buckingham Palace, and me and one of the other chefs I worked with said, come on, let's do it, having a laugh sort of thing. And yeah, anyway, got a call up. Off I went, suited and booted, off to Buckingham Palace in the summertime. So in England, the public can pay and they can go and do a little tour of certain parts of the palace. So the queue was massive and it was coming around the corner and I had to go in a different entrance. And so as I went through, I just turned to the crowd because there's lots of people taking photos. Who knows who they thought I was, but I gave them a big wave. Working for the Queen would have been amazing, but I think the people who work for the Queen, they are so dedicated that basically you have to live on site or very close to site, and when the Queen travels, you had to travel. Yeah, it was just the wrong stage of life for me, really. I was just about to get married.
Yeah. That's really awesome. Just let's talk about the whole scene of operating within Oz Harvest as well. It's a unique service that Oz Harvest brings to the table, so to speak, and now not only Australia but Vietnam and South Africa too, I believe. For the listeners, I was just thinking, could one of you run through some of the impactful programs and work that Oz Harvest offers to Australia's communities, and specifically Newcastle as well?
Oz Harvest, their main purpose is to feed people. Food rescue is number one. 66 vans Australia-wide operate every day, Monday to Friday, rescuing that food and getting it out to people. Then the other aspect of what we do is through our education program. So we've got 3 of those. They all run in Newcastle as well, which is amazing. So we've got the Nourish program, which I was involved in setting up. That's working with at-risk youth aged between 16 and 25. They do a course, it goes for about 18 weeks and they end up with a certificate too in kitchen operations. They get a barista certificate and they get a safe food handling certificate as well. So it's not just giving them the skills to feed themselves, it's also the sideline things, which is the most impactful thing, I believe, is we're taking these kids from obscurity sometimes, from difficult home lives, out of the school setting where they're not doing well. Our team of people, which is 3, building their skill set at home, but it's also about building their self-esteem and their self-worth, and the outcomes that we get because of that are incredible. Then the two other ones are equally as important. We do the Feast program, which is in primary school, so stage 3 kids. This is where I think it's a game changer. This is educating the next generation of people about food, about its worth, its value, where it comes from. They're also trialling at the moment a high school version of that. And then Nest is another program which we work in the community. We normally go to a neighbourhood centre or anywhere that there's clearly a few PowerPoints and a little kitchen set up. It's nutrition, it's education, it's skills training. So once again, they're learning about basic food, cooking, they do budgeting tips and tricks, and often we do a lot with the Multicultural Society. You know, it might be a way of connecting people sort of maybe lonely or displaced or who come regularly but don't have a group to form to. So it's another beautiful program, very impactful, great outcomes, and it allows us to move around. We don't need a set place. So that's just begun again. Last week was our first relaunch of Nest in Newcastle. Another version of our fundraising is Cooking for a Cause and the way that we can engage corporates. So they essentially would come in as a group, as a team building activity. We use rescued food. We make restaurant quality food with that rescued food with a qualified chef. So they get educated on, hey, have a look at this food. What do you think about it? And then most of the people will say, well, there's nothing wrong with it. Exactly right. This was all going to end up in landfill. So really great connection for them to see, you know, what Oz Harvest can do and what we do. So they'll come in, we'll make 10 meals per person, round about 100, 120 meals at a time. And then those meals will be packaged up and we will get them to a local agency that will be delivered the next day. So they get a little taster and they obviously pay us for the privilege. So it's a way of us sort of getting something back. And hopefully that's the first step in then connecting with that corporate to make them realise that, hey, what we can do is only done on the back of funding. Perhaps they might like to dip in a little bit deeper next time and get on board.
I think that's really worthwhile, and it probably brings us to a really valid question, which we were kind of touching on before. With all of those programs, really great to hear there's such a sense of community and achievement for the participants as well. What are the challenges that you face, and what can we do as a community to support Oz Harvest in those programs?
I think the biggest challenge we face is we feel that we definitely go under the radar. So a lot of people think, because we're a national organisation, that we are funded nationally. But actually we're responsible for finding our funding locally. And without our local wonderful partners that do support us, we wouldn't operate. More people need to know, first of all, that we need support, and they also need to know our reach. So we have, at the moment, 158 charities in Newcastle and Central Coast that we support with food. If we didn't take food to their organisation, they wouldn't be able to provide the services that they provide. I'll give you an example. Soul Cafe, I was looking the other day, we've given them 9,000 meals this year. So Soul Cafe is a wonderful charity. We love supporting them, and they're obviously very visible in the community, but a lot of people don't realise how much we actually do to support so many charities within our community, and without us, they wouldn't be able to function in the same way.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I didn't know it was locally funded, and that's very interesting.
Obviously, we have a certain amount of national, but we literally are responsible for finding a large portion of funding to support our team. So we need help. We need bigger sponsors. You know who I really would love to get on? The airport.
As Nicki's just spoken about, we can only do with what we've got. Yeah, more resources that you have, the more impact you can have. So a resource doesn't necessarily mean another food rescue vehicle. It could mean a vehicle that our education team can use to transport people around in, or it could be equipment, it could be budget for these sorts of things, for example.
We're looking for business as usual funding. That's our absolute ideal, as any charity is. It's so that we can put the funds where it needs to go.
Is there one most beneficial service that you think that Oz Harvest presents that is the most beneficial?
We're a very stats-driven world. People want to see a stat on something. How do we know that that's right? Okay, we will give you a stat on that. For me, it's absolutely mind-blowing to think of how much food we collect every single day and give to people that if we didn't do that would be absolutely criminal in my mind, that food would just go in the bin.
It is mind-blowing. And that was one of the questions as well. Like, why do you think it took Australia and the world so long to realise just how vital an organisation like Oz Harvest is?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I was looking at the stats today, and Oz Harvest nationally have rescued and delivered the equivalent of over 222 million meals since 2004, when Ronnie first had her vision and decided to actually do something about it and help people and planet. In Newcastle alone, I was looking at the stats this morning for the team, we have already rescued 62,000 kilos. And in the Central Coast, 14,000 kilos. Central Coast, we're really expanding at the moment.
That's this month.
I think the most we've ever taken was 72,000 kilos. When I first started sort of 4 years ago, we were taking about 28,000 a month. We now always pretty much hit 60 and then up to 70,000 kilos a month. And the reason why we've been able to do that is because we've made major efficiencies. Our team is extraordinary. And we've got the most incredible donors that I really want to give a big shout out to that are so on board with our cause. And we're so lucky leading the way in food rescue. One of our food donors, Woolworths, actually have got their managers onto our vans. One of the group managers, Steve Goit, actually had a vision. Once he got on the van, he realised he saw what we saw. He got connected to our cause, and therefore he ensured that his whole group went on. Then the next 2 groups went on. We worked with 3 groups in Newcastle region. And now nationally, Woolworths actually support produce managers. They get paid to come on our vans. And actually, we've already had this year over 60 Woolworths managers on our vans. Now I don't have to go to store because I've now found multiple champions in every store that are connected to our cause, that understand what we see, that understand the why, and they don't want any of their food to go to waste. And I have to give a shout out to all of our donors. We've got amazing Aldi's, we've got amazing Costco, amazing Harris Farm. All of them are working towards zero waste. They're partnering with us. They're all working towards it with us, and we are so lucky we're having that impact for so many more people.
I love hearing that, the side of like getting all the managers from Woolies on the vans themselves. And it brings me back to kind of the culture, which is a part of the question I'd love to focus you guys on, is at Feedback Organic. We've literally just had our first board meeting with an unbelievable group of directors now for our new nonprofit. One thing I've been studying and focusing on is the intent of creating an authentic and wholesome culture. How does Oz Harvest do this? Ronnie obviously plays her part, yet how does it move through the organisation like it does and encourage actions like that from other organisations?
Culture is key for me. You can't build anything if you don't have good culture, and culture comes from a caring place. And if people care about you, then they will then care about what they do, and it all sort of merges in together. Oz Harvest as an organisation is incredibly caring to all of its employees. So, for example, October, we all got a self-care day. Book it in your diary, take the day off, go and enjoy yourself. And then if you want to put a little post up as to what you did, sensational. We get birthday leave, incredible things that they provide for us. Having a strong culture is about all believing in what you're doing and supporting each other and working together for that goal, being connected to one another. And I think as a team and as an organisation, we are very connected to each other. That's where the success comes from.
Yeah, I like the self-care day.
I've got a lovely quote for you, actually. Yeah. And I did check who it was from. It's from Abe Keller. I didn't check who he was, but he says that culture is what you do when nobody's looking. And I think that says it all. You actually have to stop people working in Oz Harvest because we're so passionate. You could just never stop because there's so much more you can do. And it's such a privilege to work with people who have that passion. And we're so fortunate. We love our team.
Your purpose is awesome as well. Like, you're obviously doing so much and the right people are getting involved. And I think it's contagious as well. Like, you want to contribute, and then perhaps just as you get more involved, purpose actually matters, drives us to do a lot more. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's focus on the local ecosystem. I would be interested to know more about a lettuce question. Do you have anything around lettuce?
Yeah, I do have a question for yourself.
Okay.
So this is a question to everybody out there, and I'm going to give it a pause. How long do you think it takes for a lettuce to break down in landfill?
Yeah, interesting. In landfill. So not composted. I'm going to say it's going to take longer than composting. So maybe 2 months?
Okay, so hopefully somebody out there has thought about this question, but actually it's 25 years.
Wow.
And the reason why is because it mummifies, there's no oxygen and there's no microorganisms, and it mummifies and it gives off methane gas, which is more toxic than car fumes. You know, when I heard that lettuce story, it changed my life. And then when I went on the van, it changed my life because I went vegetarian the next day. Yeah. Because the driver who wasn't vegetarian told me about all the videos I should be watching. But the lettuce, I will never, ever be able to see a lettuce in the same way again.
Definitely stuck in my mind now. 25 years.
25 years. So what are we doing with the rest of our food that's going to landfill, and we've got to stop it?
Gotcha. It gets cocooned. It's crazy. I'm glad that was posed because that's big. It's huge. Let's talk about the future of food waste. Okay, well, let's look into our delightful food waste crystal ball. What do you think the food waste ecosystem will look like in 10 years, and where does Oz Harvest now contribute?
I think we've got to get better with our education, with our next generation. I think they're the ones who are going to come through and demand change. I think we've got to support our farmers. I think it's absolutely appalling. The big supermarkets say that if the banana's not perfectly at this angle and this length and this thickness, that it ends up in the pile. I saw Four Corners a few weeks ago with the poor old orange farmer. His trees are just laden with fruit that basically is not going to be picked and it's going to go to waste. The effects on him personally and the farming community has been shocking with people taking their own lives.
And Nicki, what do you think, to what Starkey has just touched on, what do you think the food waste ecosystem will look like in 10 years, and where does Oz Harvest now contribute?
I'd personally like to see the government take a lot more responsibility for food insecurity in this country and actually provide financial support to organisations like ourselves, like Food Bank, like Second Bite, etc., that do provide enormous amounts of support. I think individually, personally, we all need to take responsibility for our actions, and we can drive change with retailers. If we're prepared to go and get a wonky carrot, as Starkey said, we won't need to have any food waste. The farmers will actually be able to sell all of their produce to the retailers and hopefully at a price that is actually supported for them as well. I think also we need to, within society, push the fact that we want to buy local and buy Australian. I think that's really, really important. Like, I was in the supermarket the other day and somebody went, nope, that's not from Australia, I'm not buying it. I was so impressed to see that attitude.
And I think it's kind of backing, like supporting local. It's just the whole logistical problem of getting food from overseas just has so many environmental impacts as well. You know, we've got ample room. We, you know, grow on urban farms. There are so many different things we've accepted as a norm. And I think there is a massive shift which needs to change.
And look, we've got enough food in the world to feed everybody. If we actually just saved a quarter of what was wasted at the moment, we would have enough to actually feed everybody in the world. We just need to change the practices that we have. We need to not be so wasteful, and we need to, even in our own home, use up what we buy. We need to not go out and buy too much. We just need to all take a lot more responsibility in business. Business needs to drive change. Government needs to drive change. Individuals need to drive change. Oz Harvest is just so incredible, but we need that support.
I think around like behaviour change. Sure, we can kind of say, yep, let's compost food waste or actually make it never actually reach landfill. But how do you nip it in the bud before it kicks off in any way? I'll happily explain that in another podcast at some point, because that's essentially what Feedback Organic is all around. I'm intrigued to know more about For Purpose Co. Can you explain a little about to our listeners, and where do you see it contributing in the future of food or food waste?
For Purpose Co. is an important part of Oz Harvest, but it's essentially people thinking outside the box, outside the square, to raise funds. But it's sort of a supportive way for people who are thinking differently. But how do we generate that into financial reward or to make it profitable, to then put back into Oz Harvest to help with the purpose of what we're doing?
One example, oranges. We've talked about oranges going to waste on farms. They've got these vending machines, certainly in Sydney, and they're expanding, where we get those oranges that would have actually gone to landfill for free, and then we put them in the vending machines. Out comes lovely orange juice. People are happy to pay $5 or whatever they pay for it, and nothing is wasted, and 100% of the profits come back to Oz Harvest. So we've got some amazing board members. I was looking today, actually, we've got one gentleman who's in AI technology. Oz Harvest really likes to focus on technology as a future opportunity to make change.
Innovation.
They really talk about innovation, advocacy, lobbying, education. Obviously, the food rescue is our core, our bread and butter, but there's so many pillars and so many things that we do within Oz Harvest that people don't realise that make such a massive impact to community.
Snarky, I think you explained it pretty well. As in, like, commercial arm of Oz Harvest, so to speak, as in trying to create revenue, to pop it into Oz Harvest. How do you get funding for such a national body, especially locally as well? I'm intrigued to learn more about that at some point. Really interesting. Anyone out there listening to it, I think you should check it out as well. Snarky, I'd love to ask you, what is your dream for Newcastle?
Oh, yeah, this is a good one. I've been thinking about this for a long time, but I guess working as the manager, it's obviously opened a lot of doors for me in terms of people I would not normally interact with. Working in a training environment, your focus is the young people, and you're working in a small team. When you're in the manager's role in Newcastle, you've got to wear many different hats. For me, the dream is for us to have our own site where we can run our education programs in a commercial kitchen. We can have a training room, we can have a big walk-in cool room, a big walk-in freezer. We've got access to a forklift, we can park our trucks all together safely. It would just be a really one-size-fits-all up to the corporate community, as well as the young people that we engage in our education programs. Our staff could all work together. And I just think, for whatever reason, Newcastle just hasn't found that sweet spot yet. And I would like to say a special shout-out to Dave Saddington, who provides us with the space that we currently operate at a cost of $1 a year.
Amazing.
And that's 6 years, I think, he's done that for us.
Want to make sure that that message is loud and clear, that we totally appreciate what he's done for us and the opportunities he's given. But I think big picture for me, we get some good corporate dollars from somewhere and we get a space available to us, and we can build that place where we can all be together. make the magic happen.
Obviously, Dave's done a great job. I'd also like to really give a big shout out to Neil Slater, who started Oz Harvest in Newcastle. He went to see Ronnie talk. As like everybody else who sees Ronnie talk, he was totally inspired, but this time he came back and actually did something about it. He found funding locally. We were not funded by Oz Harvest in any way apart from some sort of marketing, and it's only in the last few years that we then got in the whole organisation. He had the vision. Without Dave, we wouldn't be here. We've got some amazing supporters and we're so grateful. We need more.
No, it's so true. It takes people trying to contribute in some way, and especially who have an opportunity to contribute. It takes like all sorts of different resources to actually get things off the ground, especially like new projects. Nail it all, guys. I just want to ask one last question. Let's imagine for a moment that you could put a message on a giant billboard that would reach the world. What would you put on it? Like nothing commercial, not necessarily around Oz Harvest's vision. A word or a saying or a picture or an emoji.
It'd be a message to young people for me, and it'd say, eat your dinner.
I did think about this. I thought we'll have a big yellow heart for Oz Harvest, and then I'll say inside, for the love of people and planet, stop food waste.
Spot on. It's really worthwhile. I think that would reach as much as we can. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on?
I really want a big shout out to our Yellow Army. So not only we've got a fantastic Oz Harvest team, we have got the most amazing volunteers who support it, and they don't get paid to do that. They do it for the love of Oz Harvest and for supporting people. Thank you to you also for inviting us on. We're so grateful to everyone who supports us.
It takes a village, it takes an army of legends behind everyone. But this has been a great chat, guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, it's great.
Thanks for listening to this episode in a podcast series about the food waste ecosystem in New South Wales and Newcastle. The series highlights food waste avoidance champions at a government, business and community level. To read the show notes for our podcasts, go to feedbackorganic.com.au/blog. The Food Waste Ecosystem podcast series is supported through the EPA's Love Food, Hate Waste program. Feedback Organic scales inclusive and regenerative community solutions to Australia's urban food system by training regenerative urban farmers that reconnect us with land, redirect our food waste into growing healthy food, and create circular food systems. To find out more about the work that Feedback Organic does to find local solutions to the complex global problem of food waste, visit our website feedbackorganic.com.au or follow us on Instagram or Facebook. Search Feedback Loop in your favourite podcast streaming app and subscribe today.